So, during the initiation of a project, there is a process called identification of stakeholders. It's normally done in the initiation stage of the project. So what exactly is that process supposed to represent? This is a process where you identify stakeholders in a project. You could be asking, Oscar, what is a stakeholder in a project? So a stakeholder is either an individual, a business, or even an organization, or even government that is impacted by the project, either positively impacted or negatively impacted, even if they are also perceived to be impacted or to be affected by the project. They are all considered to be stakeholders. So stakeholder is anyone who is impacted negatively or positively, or is perceived to be impacted by the project. In some cases, they just want to define them as someone who's got interest in the project, negative interest or even positive interest. So a stakeholder is a very important part in a project environment. If you want to understand and also appreciate what is a stakeholder in a project environment, I've also created a full video on stakeholder management. You can also watch it on my channel. I'll also leave a link in the description below. So stakeholder management in a project environment is very, very important. But you cannot start by managing stakeholders before identifying them. So the first process is to identify the stakeholders in the project. So that is done through the initiation stage of a project. So when you're identifying the stakeholders in a project, it's expected that there are certain information that you're going to be capturing as you identify the stakeholders. So in this video, we are going to cover this register called Stakeholder Register, which is an outcome or an output of stakeholder identification. So let us understand what we're going to cover in this particular video. So understanding a stakeholder is very important. Anyone who is affected positively or negatively, anyone who is impacted positively or negatively, or who is perceived to be impacted by the project, or who has got interest in the project, they are all classified as stakeholders in a project. In this section of the video, we are going to cover the understanding of what is a stakeholder register. So basically, a stakeholder register is a document that is used to identify people, organization, or business in a project who are impacted negatively or positively by the project, and also recording their details, their information in the register. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe button, and the notification button, so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help this channel to grow. It will also help this channel to produce more videos like this one. You could be asking, Oscar, what are examples of these stakeholders? So in this section of the video, I'm going to take you through some examples of stakeholders that you should expect in a project environment. So one of them is a project sponsor. I can tell you it will be very unusual to run a project without a sponsor. So a sponsor is the one whose responsibility is to make sure that the project is well resourced. The project is well resourced, whether it's human resources or non-human resources. If you want to understand more about the responsibilities or the role of a project sponsor, I've created a full video on a project sponsor. You can also watch it on my channel. I'll also leave a link in the description below. So a project sponsor is one of the main stakeholders. You should always make sure that the expectations are well documented, because they can make or break a project. Let me tell you from my experience, the moment you have the project sponsor on your side, it makes life very easy in your project. But if the project sponsor is not on your side, you're always going to have issues. And some of them is to do with availability of resources from functional areas. And also some funding. You might have some extra expenses in the project, unforeseen expenses or unplanned expenses that might come in. So if the relationship between you as a project manager and the project sponsor is very good, life becomes very easy. So a project sponsor is one of the key stakeholders you must always keep recorded in your register. You might always want to have a face-to-face discussion or meeting with this project sponsor. Try to understand the expectations, their requirements also. That is very, very important. Then one of the stakeholder you have to put in your register is the project team. There is no way you can run a project without a project team. A project team is the one that is responsible for building the deliverables. It's the one that is responsible for making sure that the project is achieving what it's supposed to achieve in terms of objective and also in terms of goals. So the project team is also a stakeholder. It might not be just one side of the people. It might not be even one department. A project team is normally cross-functional. What do we mean by this? It means it has got so many people from different departments. It could be finance, it could be research, it could be ICT, it could be HR, and so on and so forth. So understanding also their expectation and also their requirements as a project team, that is very important. Some might require even training, some might require weekly communication, and so on and so forth. So a project team is also a very, very important stakeholder in a project. They are the ones who are going to deliver the project. Then you also have customers or users. So in every project setup, starting with the project board, even the project team, and also even the quality team, you always have customers and users. Who are customers? Customers are the end beneficiaries of the project. They are the ones who are going to use whatever is going to come out of the project, whether it's going to be a result, they're going to use that result, whether it's going to be a product, they're going to use that product, whether it's going to be a service, they're going to use that service. So customers and users must be recorded in the stakeholder register. That is also very, very important to consider. Then, before you execute any project, you will always have some interaction with senior management. Senior management are the ones who are going to determine how the project is going to be run. So they are also part of the stakeholders that you have to consider in a project environment. Then you also have suppliers and vendors. They are also very, very important to consider. And then even the regulatory authority, whether it's city council, it's government, and so on and so forth. So you might also have functional managers who provide resources or the team into the project. You also need to keep that in the stakeholder register. If you want to dive deeper into understanding and appreciating project management as a whole, I've also created for you a very comprehensive ebook, which you can also access using the link in the description below. So in any project environment, there are common mistakes that you find. And it's not always common mistakes when it comes to planning or common mistakes when it comes to resourcing. There are also common mistakes when it comes to stakeholder register. And in this section of the video, we're going to cover the 5 common mistakes that you normally find in most of these stakeholder registers. So let us go through them one by one. So the first one is you create it once and you never update it. I can tell you that's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen in so many project managers. They claim to be very busy and they don't have more time to update the stakeholder register. That is not proper. It will affect how you collect your requirements. It will also affect how you're going to do your communication. It will also affect how you're going to engage in terms of your stakeholders. So always be updating the stakeholder register from the beginning all the way up to the end of the project. Don't do it once and then forget about it. That's one mistake. Then the second mistake is to include only internal stakeholders, or even to include not so key in stakeholders, if I can use that word. There are certain stakeholders you're going to have in the project. They are not normally key. Then there are others who are also key. So don't ever make a mistake or avoid this mistake of thinking that stakeholders is only the internal stakeholders that you have to consider in your register. You want also to consider external stakeholders. I can give you a good example. Assuming you are constructing a building which requires certain compliances to be met, and they can only be approved, and for you get a permit to proceed with construction. Imagine you've not considered the regulator as a stakeholder, and you proceed with the project. Most likely you are going to have serious issues because it won't be approved, it won't have some permits, assuming you've left out one of those permits. So it's also very important to avoid only focusing more on internal stakeholders. You focus on all the stakeholders that are affected or that are impacted by the project, or they are perceived to be impacted by the project. Then the second mistake is to keep the stakeholder register at high level. Remember, stakeholder register, you're also capturing requirements of the stakeholders. You're also even capturing expectations of the stakeholders. So if you keep it too much at a high level without understanding more in terms of their requirements and also in terms of their expectations, some of their requirements or expectations, they might even have constraints, which means you might not be able to meet them. So if you keep them at a high level, you might not understand the other details that you need. So I'll give you a good example. For example, vague entries like management are not actionable. If you are saying the expectation is management, how do you action on that? You need to identify specific individuals and their roles in a project. So don't keep it too much at high level to say just a stakeholder management, a stakeholder vendor, and so on and so forth. That makes it very vague and very difficult to manage. So don't avoid that mistake of having that kind of high level. Then the fourth one is confusing requirements with expectations. Okay, requirements by definition is what they need, deliverables or reports. That's an example. So don't always confuse requirements and expectations. You also have expectations as to what they assume will happen. For example, they expect you to have 0 defects. They expect you to have a return on investment within 12 months. Okay, so most project managers or project members, when they are creating or they're updating a stakeholder register, they always make this mistake. It's a common mistake that you should always avoid. Don't always equate requirements to stakeholders. These are two different domains altogether. Requirements, you're looking at what they need. And then on expectation, you're looking at what they assume to happen. So be able to differentiate the two. Don't put them in one column. You should always one column or one row for requirements and then another row for expectations. Then the last one is, I've seen this one with some of my projects, with other project managers from the client side. They always try not to classify or skipping the classification process. Don't ever do that. Make sure you're using the 3 classification models, either stance, friendly, neutral, or even hostile or resistant. Then you're also using the impact level in terms of classification. You're also using the power interest grid in terms of classification. So one of the common mistakes you find is skipping the classification process. Don't do that. Every stakeholder should be classified. I can tell you from my experience, once you're able to classify these stakeholders, it becomes very easy in terms of engagement, in terms of information, in terms of who to go to when there's a big issue, who to go to when there's a serious issue in the project, who to go to when you want to celebrate something in the project. So don't ever make a mistake of not classifying your stakeholders, which is part of stakeholder register. We have a section to classify your stakeholders, depending on whether they have power, they have influence, they have interest, and also if they're friendly or they are resistant or they're neutral in the project environment. If you want me to create more videos based on what we have covered in this video, or there's something that you think is not clear that requires clarification from my end, you can reach out to me or you can let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.